welcome to Schmidtless Live, the show where we try to inspire leaders in technology and design. So today I've got a very special guest. Kyle's joining me. We're going to talk about his new book, and we're going to learn a lot about how students can improve their leadership skills. And I think, while Kyle focuses a lot on high school students, I think this translates to a lot of different folks. So I think we're going to get a lot of great information today. So stick around for that. And if you have questions or comments, you can post them while the show is going on, and we can have a conversation and keep it all together. So before we get started, I have to make my little plug. We are hiring, foundrymakes.com/careers, looking for developers, project managers, whole kit and caboodle of folks. So if you have any interest, or if you're just a really talented person and you think we're pretty cool, maybe we should just have a casual conversation. So check out foundrymakes.com/careers. And then I want to jump in and introduce my guest today. Kyle, how you doing?
I'm great. How are you, Kurt?
Oh, living the dream, man. Living the dream. I'm so happy you're here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be on your show. I'm excited.
Oh, thanks. Well, so let's jump right in. So Kyle, tell me about the book. Tell me why did you feel the need to write this book about action-packed leadership? What's the whole premise there?
Yeah, the idea at the very foundation is there is no leadership without action, that the actions we take define us. And if we are understanding and fully know that the actions we take define us, what are the actions we should probably be taking to build ourselves up as strong leaders? So I wrote this for high school students, but I think a lot of people can use it in terms of how we get built up as strong leaders to take positive and intentional action.
Yeah, and what I love about how you wrote the book is you used a lot of real life type kind of stories too, right? Because I think at least the way I best learn is by kind of seeing how other people do things, right? Or hearing about how other people do things. I love reading historical biographies and things. It just really interests me to learn how people sort of got to where they were at. So it's really cool that the way you wrote that. I mean, are all those your stories? I mean, are they stories that of people you know? What's the content?
There are stories from people from around the country, actually, of all different backgrounds. And some stories come straight from me or my life, but other stories are from students I've met at speeches that I've been giving, or teachers that have told me this amazing story of a student. And so I just have a lot of different stories, because I think at the end of the day, all the content that's in this book is meaningless if not connected to the emotional connection that you're going to make with it. So
Right.
when we're emotionally connected to something, we feel more enticed to put it into action in our lives.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. So do you do you find, because I mean, looking at when I was in high school, leadership was not really a thing I thought about, right? I mean, my father was a minister, and he led a church, and I just thought it was kind of natural to get up every once a week and tell everybody how to live their lives. I thought that was just a normal job, that people had. But I didn't look at it as leadership. I mean, do you find when you're going into these schools and you're talking to people about leadership that they don't think about it as like part of their career, part of their life, part of things? They're just looking for, like, what am I going to do for a job, right? Is it at the forefront of their minds, or what are you finding?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, because I think at the core of it is we're all trying to figure out what our purpose is, where we belong, how we fit. And I think young people, they realize that those are the things they're searching for, but they don't always know how to go after the answers. And I think that's what I've been doing in terms of my speaking, my writing, is whether it's consciously on the forefront of your brain or not, how do we make sure that we're intentionally thinking about the actions we're taking to put us in a better position, whether we want to be a sports broadcaster or a project manager or developer like you're looking for. Like, what are the actions that we have to take now versus being in college or after college, before we start thinking about how to kind of fill the gaps in our lives?
Yeah. Well, because and so when you're coaching these students, I mean, where do you start? I mean, are you finding that a lot of people that are drawn towards it? Because I've always heard, there's a term called the born leader. That she's a born leader. That person's a born leader. Do you find that that's the case, or is this a skill that people can be taught?
Yeah, sometimes. Sometimes people are born and they just have natural skills or abilities that lend themselves to leadership. But personally, I think everyone is a leader. And I say that because I think leadership is all about influence. And everyone could probably think about someone right now that you have some sort of influence over. So whether that's your friend or your colleague, someone that maybe makes a decision because of something that you say or do, that influence is leadership. And so that could be positive, that could be negative, it could be in the middle. And I think my goal is to kind of get people towards that positive side so that they're taking action in ways that is meaningful and using their influence in a way that builds other people up instead of breaks them down. So
Yeah.
the hope is that we're building skill sets, whether people are born with those skills or just building them now, that wherever you're at, we're kind of taking those skill sets and just upping your game within them.
So then it's about intentionality, right? Like it's being intentional with those skills, right?
Yeah, you talked about kind of, where does it start?
Yeah.
And I say all the time that it's an inside out approach to leadership. So, what are our values? What do we believe in? How do we want to be perceived? And these questions are actually really important when we start building a framework for how we act, how we communicate, how we build relationships, what we value internally, whether it be kindness or generosity or patience, well, these kind of key words that we kind of intrinsically want at the very depth of our being and our character, if we kind of, as I like to say, fill our cup from the bottom, hopefully those things start to overflow and our communication, our relationships, our leadership abilities naturally build upon the foundations that we're setting.
And you mentioned, everybody's a leader. I mean, but do you find people that are like, oh, I'm not, I can't, I'm not good at this. I'm not going to be good at this. And is your response not with that attitude?
Sometimes, yeah. And that's a great point. I mean, there are people who are leaders but don't know it yet. And I think that sometimes it's people like me or people who deal a lot with young people, whether it's teachers or parents, that have to kind of pull that out of them to say, no, you actually can make an impact. You can make a difference in this world, even if it's just on one other person. And using your influence for good is going to be much better for you, for them, for everyone involved as you kind of start to come out of that shell and build yourself up as a leader.
Yeah. Well, I think that's why it's important in your book you tell like these stories because, like I mentioned, my father was definitely a leader but I never thought I could be like him. And when you think of leaders today, you get these immediate images of like Steve Jobs or presidents or prime ministers or you know what I mean or Kanye or something, right?
Yeah.
Like you get these big images of these people that seem they're on this unattainable level when it's not necessarily about becoming a rock star or a president of a company or things like that, right? It's about just um, having a more positive influence in your day to day, right?
Yeah, and when I first started doing some of this work on my own, it was the beginning of 2016, and I said, you know what? At the end of the day, my primary mission, the core mission that I'm on, is to help young people become the best versions of themselves. And I use the word versions, plural, because I believe that it's not this cookie cutter framework. I'm not trying to get them to be what I think they should be. I'm trying to help them fully understand where they are and where they'd like to be and what actions there are in between those spaces to get them there. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, I'll just share this too. You mentioned your dad and my dad, wasn't a CEO or anything like that. He's a physical therapist. And you don't think of him as the project manager, the leader of the organization. But I'll never forget the day that he sat me down and he said, "Hey, we're going to take the entire morning. So I hope you don't have any plans. And I'm going to teach you everything that I know about finances."
Mm.
And we sat down and we looked at everything. And I was interested, so that was probably helpful to
Sure.
him, you know. But just looking at it and saying like, this is a Roth IRA, this is an investment portfolio, these are, is what you want to look at from diversifying. And I realized not everyone has that opportunity, and I'm very fortunate and feel blessed to have that opportunity. But the second thing is what he didn't realize is he was being a very strong leader in that moment. And I think everyone, whether young or old, has an opportunity to be a leader every single day if they would just fully open their eyes to what is in front of them.
Mhm. No, that's a really good point. Yeah, because I see, like just like you said, you see so many talented people that have that great influence, and again, if they just took the opportunity to hone that skill, they could propel not only themselves, but they can lift up the people around them that they care about as well, right? So it's not just about becoming a big shot yourself, right? It's about what you can, the positive impact you can have in your company, your community, your family, right?
For sure. And I talk so much about servant leadership and how, at the very foundation, a strong leader should be generous, should bring about a caring personality to anything that they come in contact with, should show any follower that they have that they are valued, that they're important. And I think that's kind of, if you're building this building or precipice or pyramid of leadership, whatever you want to say, at the very foundation, you have to really truly care about others. And if you're not doing that, then, selfish leadership is typically going to lead to a lack of influence in the future because people won't trust you as much as they would trust someone else.
Yeah. Well, and trust's a big part of it, right? Because that's what I've seen in bad leaders is that they don't trust their followers or their employees or whatever the case may be. And because of that lack of trust, they usually become bad leaders because they, while they can get a lot of stuff done, right? They can move, they can move the ball down the field, as it were, but they leave a wake of destruction behind them, right?
Right. Yeah. And you see a lot of examples of companies. I mean, Southwest was always the shining example. I think in COVID times, it's a little bit tough to gauge where they're at, but Southwest always said we lead with the heart, and they made their decisions not strictly based on bottom line, but on how their employees were going to feel about them, how their customers were going to respond and react. And all of a sudden, you have policies like your bags fly free, and people are like, "That's amazing! You listen to us." And of course, the bottom line is important, but what the concept is, or the idea is strong leadership values people. And when you value those people, that directly connects and leads to a stronger bottom line.
Yeah. So, Kyle, what's your advice? If I'm, let's say I'm a parent and I'm watching this, and maybe I have younger children and they're growing up. I mean, what's your advice to start exposing them to the idea of leadership without making it so I don't know, so ambiguous? I mean, are there any tactical things that you've seen work? As a you know as a person who maybe has a young child, or maybe not even young, maybe they're a teenager, and you're seeing some potential in them. Like, where's a great place to start with those conversations? I mean, besides getting them your book, obviously,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
telling them to read it,
that
right?
that would be the first place to
That's the
begin.
first place to start. I love
Um,
it.
No, I would say the biggest thing for young people is exposure. So giving them an opportunity to be in an organization, in a sport, in band, and lean into their passion and what they find interest in. So, if you have young kids and they start to show an interest in singing, maybe that's your opportunity to really peg into that and say, could I get them involved in, a play? Could I get them in the school musical? Could I find a community college nearby that needs kids as a part of their show? And really expose them to the things that they're feeling passionate about. And maybe they go in that direction, maybe they don't, but what you're showing them is that they have an opportunity to build the skills that they're interested in building, that they can grow in ways that they feel comfortable growing in. And beyond that, I would just say, continue to learn yourself as a parent, as a teacher, as an administrator, wherever you are in the lives of young people. If you're continuing to grow and learn and provide a good example, we know that kids are looking up to people and following those examples. So kind of figure out, where do you stand from an awareness perspective of your leadership skills or abilities? What value can you bring or add to them?
Mm,
And lean into those skills, the skills that you can bring, just like my dad did with me so long ago.
yeah, that's super smart. I think it's great. Seeking those opportunities. being intentional, right? Taking the time to actually set them up in an environment where they have the ability to flex those things, or creating an environment even, right? I mean, I know folks that they coach baseball teams and their kids are on the baseball teams, and and they try to get them into those positions of this is what it's like managing a team and things like that, right? So it's
Hmm.
not even about just jumping to some crazy corporate sort of structure, right? I mean, it's as simple as you said. It's as a community play, as a great place. I was in plays in high school. Yeah, I definitely learned a lot about being in front of an audience. That's for sure. Uh,
Yeah, and I'm sure that benefits you now too, just those little experiences that you've had along the way.
yeah, and so to that point, let's switch gears. Let's say I am a teenager, and I'm what I hear, at least from the young people that I speak to, is that they're just especially nowadays with COVID and all the I mean, so many people are out of work. Trying to figure out what you want to do and what you want to be, right? I think you even brought it up. Kind of, it's such a big question for young people today. I mean, you obviously get this sort of thing. It's like, great, yeah, I'm going to be a leader, but leader of what?
Hmm.
Right? How do you coach people around that?
Yeah, and I always call it like we're in the age of the side gig right now, where even as a high school student, some of the high school students out there that I've met are trading and selling baseball cards on weekends and making more money than their teachers. And so we have no idea where we're headed from a, online only, virtual businesses, hybrid, like all of this stuff is very up in the air. But I would say that if we're building the inside out approach that I'm talking about from a values perspective, thinking about who we are as people, like, are we going to live with integrity? Are we going to be truthful and honest? Are we going to be people who recognize and understand the need to care for other people? And those types of foundational things, I think those are a mindset. And when we build and develop that mindset, it really doesn't matter if you're going to become a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant. It's all about having the foundational skills to add the technical skills on top of that to say, all right, I know who I am as a person. I know, the type of energy I want to bring into this world.
Yep.
And now I can, no matter what I choose to do, whether I drive for Uber for the next year of my life,
Right.
I'm bringing the right energy, and that energy is going to lead, I believe, to more happiness,
Yeah.
more success than, the money would ever make.
And to that point, Kyle, it's that I love that you brought up mindset, because it's something that I talk a lot about and how important it is to have a growth oriented mindset. And Carol Dweck wrote a great book years ago about growth mindset that I still tell anybody, if you're a human being, you should read this book. It's just a great book. Um, but it is about, because I hear people talk about, well, luck, or that person's lucky, or something like that. But luck is just opportunity acted on, right? It's an opportunity presented itself, it's identified, and then it's acted upon. So going back to your point about action packed leadership, you're creating those opportunities, right? Is that kind of what I'm hearing you say?
Yeah, absolutely. And, as Jay-Z once said, they say when you play with skills, good luck will happen. So, you're quoting Carol Dweck and then the right type of things. I'm just quoting what the young people are looking for. Um, yeah, I have a whole chapter in my new book about taking initiative and what it looks like, how to recognize an opportunity to step up, how to recognize when to step back as a leader, and maybe take in the information and learn some more before you really take the helm.
Right,
These
because
are,
it's not about just stomping all over everybody, right?
yeah,
That's not what a leader does, right?
leadership, probably even more so involves listening than talking, to your point. So, yeah, there's a whole chapter in there because I think, recognizing the opportunity to step up or step back is at the very core, the very forefront of saying, is this an opportunity for me, or is this an opportunity for me to learn? And those are two very different things. So, when to take action and when to kind of step back and know what your role is in certain situations.
Yeah. It's great. Again, going back to the mindset piece is, if you're if you're in the right mindset, if you're in the right space, you see these opportunities and you can act on them. And sometimes that action, like you just said, is just being a attentive listener, being present, right? And
Yeah.
that's something I've struggled with bad leadership in the past, is they're just not present. It's just kind of
Yep.
it's a very transactional relationship, right?
Yeah.
Um, and especially in times of COVID, with a lot of people working from home, what I've seen and I've talked about in this show a ton is that you can see leadership has got a spotlight on it, and bad leadership is really it becomes so painfully obvious with this whole sort of virtual working thing versus good leadership. I mean, the gray area is kind of being kind of shuffled aside, and it's becoming
Yeah.
very transparent on who's good and who's doing well during these times. Wouldn't you agree?
I do. And I think you're right. It's everywhere. It's in our churches, it's in our school districts, it's in businesses, and we see it all over the place. It's in hospital systems with the way that people are treating their nurses, the people on the front lines of some of this. Leadership is constantly being evaluated. And that's a positive, but also can be a little nerve-wracking for young people who are wondering, am I a leader? Can I go for this? Can I do it? And I think at the end of the day, what we need to look at is how we're making an impact, and the people that we're actually leading, how are they feeling in the given times? And it's one thing to say, hey, there's things that we need to do that we absolutely have no control over. If COVID is rampant and everyone says we need to shut this down, well, what are you going to do? You have to shut it down. But in the midst of that, I think there's a million different things that you can do when you have a gun to your head. I think that's from the show Suits, if you've ever seen that. So you don't just have to either give someone your money or get shot,
Yeah,
and
right, right.
and I think that's the kind of the crux of leadership, good leadership or bad leadership, is, how are we thinking about it at the end of the day? Because we're not always going to do it right. And what I've kind of created is a framework, and my framework is basically a circle that should lead back into itself.
Mm,
And it's basically that our thoughts direct our actions direct our outcomes, and our outcomes, when analyzed, will direct new thoughts that give new actions, that give new outcomes. And so this isn't me saying, hey, get to this level and you will be an amazing, phenomenal leader and no
hmm
one will ever question you again. This is me saying this is a continuous learning. This is, creating a mindset that will benefit you for the rest of your life. And it's going to be a constant process, something that we're going to work through forever as human beings.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I see is, people assume there's so many other things that surround being a leader, and those are things like titles and
Mhm.
amounts of money they make, and the how many people are following them or liking their videos or doing different things, right?
Yep.
And like you're saying, it's kind of a lifelong journey. It's there's not a level that you're going to get to and say, all right, yeah, I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, yeah, I'm just gonna coast from here, right?
Yeah, well, and it's funny because there's interesting studies on this. We're very comparative people, as human beings. We compare ourselves all the time. And one study I found really interesting was that humans would rather receive a lower amount of money, but be in line in terms of compensation with all of their colleagues, than receive a higher level of income, but be lower in terms of pay than their colleagues. So even though it would personally benefit you, to make more money, if your colleagues are making more than you're not going to be as happy. And so, it happens in leadership all the time
Yeah.
too. And I hope that young people are finding these values that help build them up internally versus just looking externally to say, where do I find my value? Is it in my follower count? Is it in my YouTube subscribers? Is it in my Facebook friends? Or am I good enough? Am I smart enough? Am I strong enough just by being myself?
Yeah.
And then how do I build myself up in a way that makes me happiest and makes me feel my purpose is being met.
No, I think that's really good advice. So yeah, Kyle, if you know, you wanted people to have one takeaway from the book, what's your hopes?
Yeah, I think the best advice I could ever give anyone, it's advice that a mentor of mine once gave me when I was in college. And he looked me in the eyes. He said, Kyle, do you want to know the most important thing you can ever do in this world? I said, of course, who wouldn't want to know the most important thing you could ever do in this world? And he looked me in the eyes and he said, Kyle, the most important thing you can ever do in this world is see written on the forehead of every person you meet the words, make me feel important. And at the end of the day, I think that's what leadership is. That's what influence is truly going out of your comfort zone, even if you're stressed, even if you're anxious, even if you're overtired, and just recognizing that someone else is probably more stressed, is probably more tired, is probably more anxious. And it's your job, it's your goal, it's your mission to go out of your comfort zone to make the people around you feel valued, feel important every single day.
I love it. That's beautiful. So, Kyle, I want to thank you for joining me. You know, I've learned a lot, and I appreciate you taking the time to write that book. If I want to know more about Kyle and the work you're doing, and where I can get the book, you want to hold it up again so we can see it and
Yeah, for
tell
sure.
us,
Here.
tell us where I can find out more.
Yeah, so my book is Action Packed Leadership. It's available on Amazon. I'm very excited. It came out 2 weeks ago and it became a #1 bestseller in two different categories. So it's, you work on something for a really long time. I'm very excited at the initial response. But other than that, by all means, my website is kylewillkom.com. You can also go to actionpackedleadership.com. You'll see my other books. You'll see my online courses that I've created.
Cool.
Those are places that you can find all of my stuff.
That's awesome, Kyle. Well, Kyle, I'm so glad I got you on the show here before you show up on Oprah or some other, you know, the Today, when you're on the Today Show, you know, we can say, you know, it all, I got you first. So, really proud of you. Thanks for doing the work that you do. And, yeah, and I hope you continue to have a lot of success.
Thank you so much. And when I'm with Jimmy Fallon, I'll say, "Hey, Kurt says hello."
There you go. You tell him that you tell myself. Cool. All right. Thanks, Kyle. All right,
Thank you so
everyone.
much.
We're going to end the show now. But if you have any questions or comments, make sure you check out the show notes. There'll be more info and links to all of Kyle's stuff there. Again, just a quick reminder, we're hiring at Foundry, foundrymakes.com/careers. And stay tuned. Just make sure you hit the subscribe button. Hit a like video if you liked what we had to talk about today. That's always helpful, obviously. Not subscribed, subscribe, because there's a lot more cool stuff coming up in the next couple of weeks. I've got some amazing guests. I'm not going to tell you right now who they are, but they're really awesome and they're going to be great. So thanks for joining me today, and we'll see you next time.